Corporation is our mother company. It's our holding company for Namilco and for Sea Rice Guyana. And you'll hear about another company called Sea Rice Caribbean in a minute. So Seaboard Corporation is a large agro-industrial company in the United States that owns these entities in Guyana. And you guys must have read something in yesterday's paper, and we're here to do some clarification on that. So I'll just introduce, I'll leave you to Mr. Chappell to take over.
Thank you, Matt. Really, very briefly, and again, I'd like to thank you all for turning out in such numbers. I didn't realise it was attracting so much of the media attention. But what's been reported in the press for the past couple of weeks has now really reached a conclusion. We've reached a settlement point with both the government of Guyana, with GRDB representing the farming industry in Guyana, the rice industry in Guyana, and the group, as Bert says, that we represent the Seaboard Company. As Bert says, I'm the general manager of Sea Rice Caribbean, and we have also an office in Miami where we trade rice from other regions in the world and we market elsewhere. Basically, what has happened is that we have invested in a small group of distressed rice mills, whereby we will take ownership, a 50% ownership in those mills, and by doing so, part of our investment will take the form of settling the outstanding creditors that have been owed money for a long time at those mills. That entails paying back a loan that was made to those mills by the government in 2011. That debt, which totaled 495 million Guyana dollars, was in fact settled 8 days ago. That is now taken care of, so the mills are no longer indebted to the government. But what remains are very old debts for paddy purchased and not paid for to farmers in the Essequibo region and in the Blackbush Polder region of the Quarantine, and we intend, starting tomorrow, to settle the payments to those farmers too. That sort of basically concludes our investment, in return for which we take over ownership of those mills and begin to operate those mills, starting with this very crop that's commencing at this time. We hope that, and in fact more than hope, we feel sure that we will be a very good, honest, reliable alternative to the farmers to whom they can sell their paddy. In a nutshell, that's it. But I would like to say that in reaching this benchmark stage of something that has taken 2 years, we owe a lot of thanks to the Minister of Agriculture, to GRDB. They've assisted us a great deal in reaching this point, and what has been reached has been done with total amicability with those two offices. Ladies and gentlemen, basically that's it, but we're obviously open to answer reasonable questions.
$495 million is a significant amount of money for a company to invest. What was the rationale behind the investment?
If you went back to 2011, I'm not sure exactly what point of the year it was, because at that time we weren't actually planning what we've just achieved, but those mills at that time were unable to pay the farmers for substantial debts from paddy. And the government came to the aid of the miller at that time because of the plight of the farmers, and under a repayment program made available, I think it was about $2 million US or 400 million Guyana dollars at that time. And since that time it has been attracting interest, which has led it to become 495 million. And in the negotiations to take over those mills, we pledged that we would settle the government debt, we would settle the outstanding farmers. Does that answer your question?
How much is owed to the farmers, and are these companies really viable?
They're extremely viable, especially now if you consider they are at least partly owned by Seaboard, which is truly, as my colleague Bert has said, it's a very huge global group. We're represented in most countries of the world, and we would not be making this investment unless we considered it very, very viable, unless we had great confidence in the future rice industry of Guyana.
How much is owed to the farmers?
Approximately 53 million Guyana dollars. We have a list of all the farmers involved, and that's been approved by GRDV as being more or less accurate.
If you can carry me through the chain from the paddy to the how did it get to export in terms of your involvement, in terms of from the sourcing from the paddy to the chain?
It will be a totally integrated system, excluding that we do not actually grow paddy ourselves. There are some lands involved, but they're not really significant. So basically, like any other mill in the country, we will wish to buy paddy from the farmers at competitive prices, and then depending on the intended market for that paddy, if it's Venezuela, it may be just maybe paddy itself that you're exporting. And all that would entail then is the cleaning and the drying of the paddy and making sure that the paddy met the specifications required by a Venezuelan contract. Alternatively, there's a massive market across Europe that Guyana has always engaged, which is for brown cargo rice. And because I've personally been in this country trading rice for 20 years, all of those players across Europe, and obviously we wish to re-engage with those players. And then finally, if you take, first you have the paddy, and then you have the cargo rice, which has got the husk removed, and then finally if you take off the brown layer, which is the brown, you come down to white rice, which can be produced to various specifications. And the white rice is traded predominantly in Jamaica and of course with Venezuela. Those are the predominant markets. There are other markets too, but those are the main ones that Guyana engages.
Well, what are your target markets?
I'm sorry?
Production target, what are you looking at?
It's a good question actually, because I would like to say that in the 2 years it's taken us to put together what we have, because of the trade with Venezuela, it's been difficult to service the traditional markets that prior to Venezuela, Guyana always traded, which were predominantly Europe, always certainly in Jamaica because it's CARICOM, but to a degree in the past, Haiti. Some of those markets have gone by the wayside because if you're buying paddy for a Venezuelan market, which has tremendous financial yields, it's hard also to sell to a cheaper market. But we're a little proud at Sea Rice in that we have kept those markets alive to the best of our ability, to a degree trading quite a lot out of Suriname, which is a very similar product, the Venezuelan market, so it has been possible to just keep a foot in the door with those markets.
Production targets and production runs?
Very, 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 very broad brush figures. We would be looking at a production of the equivalent of 20,000 tonnes of brown cargo rice per year from each mill, but not to say that we would plan to produce 20,000 tonnes of cargo, but the equivalent thereof. Might be more because it's paddy, less because it's white rice.
With reference the payment to the farmers, what systems are you putting in place to ensure we don't have a recurrence of the situation that you are announcing?
We won't have a recurrence.
What are the systems?
Well, if I can answer you this way, 13 or 14 years ago we bought 50% of the Fairfield mill, in which our partner is John Finance, and we're on their property right now. And I don't think you can point to any farmer ever in 14 years that has not been paid promptly. Does that answer your question? And we plan to do things just the same. The reputation is our reputation, and I should add really that Mr. Sukai here is the CEO of National Milling Company, a company that's been in Guyana for 44 years.
Yeah.
And what does the decision to pay the farmers mean to? What does it mean to the farmers?
Great relief, I should imagine. I would hope so. A lot of smiles. We've got a fairly comprehensive list, and we'll start distributing cheques tomorrow. We'll start in the Blackbush Polder area and Village 70 out on the quarantine, and then on Thursday we'll make our way out to Essequibo, to where the mill Vilverden is, and there's also a paddy receiving centre called Paradise, We've chosen to do it that way around because GRDB will also be on Essequibo on Thursday, and we'll work in conjunction with them so that they can observe fair play.
Any other questions? I guess everybody here is familiar with the history of this whole thing. And
Not
how-
quite.
Not quite.
No, that's,
Well, in a nutshell, there was another company, and the name was being bandied around, sometimes incorrectly, that owed rice farmers money. And because of that, various sanctions were placed against that company that restrained them from trading rice sold
sanctions from who?
through the government.
Okay.
As we saw an opportunity, right? We're in the rice business as well. We mean Seaboard Corporation stepped in and basically corrected those problems in paying farmers and paying back the government, as mentioned. So that's the history behind it. And we're now involved directly into milling. Because previously we were trading, now we were into milling. Fairfield Rice, which is a subsidiary, a joint venture with John Finance, that was our first venture. And now this is our second in the rice business in Ghana. But as the chap has mentioned, he's been trading rice in Ghana for over 20 years. First with a company called Nigeria Investments, and then they were sold out to Seaboard, partnered with John Finance and all these things.
Building on to what Mr. Sukai has said, and thank you for, it's probably also pertinent to say that there have been many references to Mahaicony Rice Mill Ltd in the press. We should make very clear that Mahaicony Rice Mill is in Branch Road in Mahaicony. We are not investing in that mill simply because it's far too close to Fairfield, our own mill, and it would cause conflict of interest, perhaps at some point in the future, who knows. But we are not taking over any of the obligations of that mill, and we are not making any investment in Mahaicony Rice Mill. Rather, we are investing in the mill that's out of Blackwoods Boulder, in the receiving centre that's at Village 70 on the Quarantine Coast, the Vilverden Mill, which is in Essequibo, and the receiving centre at Paradise, which is also on the Essequibo coast. But categorically, we are not investing in the mill in Mahaicony, and we're not investing in Mahaicony Rice Mill. Any more questions?
Okay, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to short notice. We're hoping that you will report what we just said, accurately.